What are the creepiest urban legends from your area? There used to be an insane asylum by my house in the 70s. It is probably 5 minutes away from my house if that. But, they tore it down in the 90s because it was just a giant eyesore, and had a dark history of mistreating patients. There is a cemetery on the property with hundreds of unnamed people who died there. In the early 2000s, Walmart bought the land and wanted to build a Walmart there since you would be able to see it from the highway. They excavated and such, and the day before they were set to start construction, a huge landslide happened in the middle of the night that blocked the highway for days. If it would have happened at rush hour, tons of people would have died. Ultimately, it was deemed unsafe territory to build on, so it remains empty. Except for all the bike trails through the area. But no one ever rides during nighttime, lol. I guess the people who died there didn't want to be chilling underneath a Walmart Aisle 10. Am I right to guess that this is in the Pittsburgh area? The last part made me blow air from the nose, lol. We have a chair that's been untouched since the 1960s in our school's boiler room. The janitor swears that a boy got locked down there by these other kids the day before summer break and died from the heat. He claims that the chair moves and that the door handle moves like he's still there trying to get out. I bet the janitor sleeps in that chair and used that legend to explain the chair. I've heard this before as well. Are you from we? I live in Romania, and as a kid the most common legend was the black ambulance that would steal kids and harvest their organs, and that kids' bodies were to be found a few days later abandoned on a field with some money for the funeral. Also, in my town our parents would never let us go to the cinema because there was this legend about a man who put AIDS-infected needles on the seats. At least they were nice to put funeral money to. I worked in Romania with a girl from Moldavia somewhere who claimed that a friend of hers growing up was kidnapped and had organs taken. I've always thought it sounded a bit far-fetched. I suppose this legend could be the origin? Or was there actual organ harvesting happening in the early 90s? It's not really a known creepy urban legend, but in the 1800s in the Oahe Mountains in Idaho there was a group of hunters staying in a cabin, and after failing to come back to their families a search party was sent out to look for them. They found the cabin, locked from the inside, with the window also locked from the inside. And they found all of the hunters dead with their heads crushed. No one knows who did it or how. But the incident repeated itself in like the 1970s or something. Can you tell anything more? Maybe a news article from the 1971? Since it's so bizarre, it must have been documented. Not really creepy, but there's one house in my hometown that is said to be haunted. There's a tray with a golden teapot on it, and the tray has scratch marks on it. That tray has been sitting in the same location for years, remaining completely untouched, and still, to this day no one has touched it. Some of my friends insist that it's haunted. There's also an urban legend about how an electrician, or someone with a similar job, fell off of a ladder while setting up one of the lights in the middle school gym. His ghost is said to haunt the gym at night whenever the lights are turned off. That teapot thing reminds me of my childhood home. There's a teddy bear that can't be moved from the house. It used to really creep me out to go up to the attic. One day we found old World War II blackout blinds, a navy chest and gas masks and turtle shells. Of course now the reasonable explanation of the guy living there before us was in the Navy during World War II and just wanted the teddy kept there as a memento makes sense, but I wonder if over the years it'll evolve into a legend. May have to write a creepy note to accompany it. We had a similar house in my hometown growing up. You could just barely peek in the kitchen windows of this tiny house. The table was set for dinner for 2 people. Some older kids broke in one time and swore that there was still slippers lined up at the end of the bed and clothes in the hamper. Like the people who lived there just vanished. Super spooky. As an adult I found out that an elderly couple owned it. The husband had a heart attack and died at the hospital. The wife was so heartbroken they immediately put her into a care home and she passed within a week. Neither of them went back home after his heart attack. Their only son was so upset he locked the doors and never went back in, so the whole house was just a time capsule. They tore the whole thing down recently, and I often wonder if they took the furniture and stuff out first or just bulldozed it all. What we kids thought was scary turned out to just be sad. Black shucks, big, black, ghostly / demonic dogs with glowing red eyes that are supposed to be omens of death. They generally appear on roads at night. There's apparently a few around town and some drag chains too. Also, one is actually a bear, but I have no idea why we have a ghostly demonic bear, because we don't even have normal bears in this country. They can also be helpful spirits too. They accompany lone female / child travelers on the roads and protect them from danger. In regards to the omen of death part, I believe the superstition is that if you see one, then you must not tell anyone else about it for a year and a day. Otherwise you or someone you are close to will die. If you're from the UK, we did used to have bears until the Middle Ages. It's remarkable that a folk story from that time could still be around today. We have 3 mysterious men in a car called the Guardians, yes, that's what we call them, along Montana Highway 464. People have told experiences where they have car trouble and 3 men in a car drive up and help them out. Other people talk about headlights that disappear in places where they shouldn't disappear. We also have a Native American in a jean jacket and jeans who materializes in front of cars before they can swerve out of the way. When the driver checks for a victim, no body is found. Their names are Albert, Anthony and Arnold, more colloquially known as Triple A. Jesus, it's like the polar opposite of the Nevada haunted police car, I do the actual name, sorry, that is known to run people off the road and rape and murder the victims inside. The Polly car is from the 1960s but is somehow always able to catch their victims. Never mind, I got confused with an SCP story, ha ha ha. Thank fuck though, right? Not my current area, but one of the primary schools I went to had a few trees in the back corner of the field with a mountain of dirt. There were rumors that it was haunted with horses, of all things lol, there was one black horse that was evil. And if you sat under the trees and closed your eyes, you could hear the horses. It wasn't until I was older that I found out the school was built on an old racing ground and it closed down after one of the jockeys poisoned a competitor's black horse. Sounds like Bad Horse's origin story. You know, the thoroughbred of sin. Whoa. Reminds me of when I visited my cousins as a kid. My uncle told us about a black ghost horse that was spotted out behind a friend's house while we were all visiting said friend. Rural Ohio. We had one called Joey the Clown. Nearby is a disused Victorian railway which has been transformed into a 20-ish mile path for people to walk, jog, cycle etc. and links different parts of the city, just as the rail line would have. Before that it was just disused and didn't have tarmac or anything. Just mud, grass, and there were no gates in the side doors of the tunnels. The tunnels are really dark in there and we used to hang around in there when we were kids. We became aware of the urban legend of Joey the Clown, who was a lunatic who ran away from the circus, kidnapped a baby and hanged it by its feet upside down from one of the pipes above the tunnel right into the path of an oncoming locomotive which he also jumped in front of. Rumors still persist that people have seen Joey's ghost in the tunnels, and if you were brave enough to go in the tunnel at night you would hear him laugh, hear a baby cry and the sound of the locomotive. My mother uses this to her advantage when I was a kid though, by telling my sisters and I that Joey the Clown preys upon children who wear odd socks and who refuse to wear clean underwear. So of course we'd all be wearing matching socks and make sure we had pristine underwear on when we ventured down to the old railway. First of all, that's creepy as fuck. But that last part was funny. If I was a kid and had been told about Joey the Clown, there's no way my underwear would be clean walking past that old railway. There's one that I'm actually connected to. There was this friend I had in 3rd grade. He was cool and we had a lot of the same interests. He always sat with me at lunch and played with me during recess. One day he was acting weird. He said that there were bugs in his brain. I asked him if he was okay, but he never responded. I didn't see him at lunch or recess either. He didn't come to school for 3 days, so I asked the teacher what happened to him, and she just said it's not your business. I never saw him again. Afterwards, other kids in my class started making up bullshit stories about how he ran into the woods and drowned in the lake, or got kidnapped by an escaped convict, and as his friend I was obviously very offended by these kids making horror stories out of this guy I really cared about. Now 10 years later, the kids in my town are still perpetuating these myths. I just think it's crazy that this generation of kids who were literally infants when this happened are still talking about it like it's an urban myth. None of them know the true story, and neither do I, but they sure as hell don't know that I knew this kid who they believe these legends about. It sounds like your friend was probably ill, either physically, something like a brain tumor, or mentally. Either way, he was probably hospitalized, and there are psych centers for kids. When I was in high school, we were goofing around in a small park full of trees near the cemetery late at night, and we made up a story to scare ourselves, about the tree man who would jump out from behind trees and grab you. We all had torches and were trying to keep all the trees lit so the tree man couldn't hide behind any of them, fully aware we just made the story up 5 minutes ago. But it was dark and spooky, so we still managed to give each other the willies and laugh about it at the same time. We loosely tied our story to a triple murder that happened in the 1800s, the monument for which was visible from the park, for extra spookums. Every now and again for the rest of the year, someone would jump out from behind a tree or grab someone and yell "Tree man." It was just one of those stupid in-jokes teens have, and decades before Slender Man was a thing. It was the early 90s. Imagine my surprise when years later I heard the kids in lower grades telling each other quite seriously about the tree man who haunts this one park near the cemetery. Lol. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.